The tiger will never lie down with the lamb. He acknowledges no pact that is not reciprocal. The lamb must learn to run with the tigers, a great feline tawny shape, whose pelt was barred with a savage geometry of bars the colour of burned wood. His domed, heavy head, so terrible he must hide it. How subtle the muscles, how profound the tread. The annihilating vehemence of his eyes, like twin suns. I felt my breast ripped apart as if I suffered a marvellous wound. The valet moved forward as if to cover up his master, now the girl had acknowledged him, but I said, "No." The tiger sat still as a heraldic beast, in the pact he had made with his own ferocity to do me no harm. He was far larger than I could have imagined, from the poor shabby things I'd seen once, in the Tsar's menagerie at Petersburg. The golden fruit of their eyes dimming, withering in the far north of captivity. Nothing about him reminded me of humanity. I therefore, shivering, now unfastened my jacket, to show him I would do him no harm. Yet I was clumsy and blushed a little, for no man pride it was, not shame, that thwarted my fingers so, and a certain trepidation lest this frail little article of human upholstery before him might not be in itself grand enough to satisfy his expectations of us, since those, for all I knew, might have grown infinite during the endless time he had been waiting. The wind clattered in the rushes, purled and eddied in the river. I showed his grave silence my white skin, my red nipples, and the horses turned their heads to watch me, also as if they too were courteously curious as to the fleshy nature of women. Then the beast lowered his massive head. "Enough," said the valet with a gesture. The wind died down, all was still again. Then they went off together, the valet on his pony, the tiger running before him like a hound, and I walked along the river bank for a while. I felt I was at liberty for the first time in my life. Then the winter sun began to tarnish, a few flakes of snow drifted from the I found the beast hand and the corpse of a young roebuck slung behind his saddle. I climbed up on the black gelding in silence, and so we returned to the palace, as the snow fell more and more heavily, obscuring the tracks that we had left behind us. The valet did not return to my cell, but instead to an elegant, if old-fashioned, boudoir, with sofas of faded pink brocade, a djinns treasury of oriental carpets, tintinnabulation of cut-glass chandeliers, candles in antlered holders struck rainbows from the prismatic hearts of my diamond earrings that lay on my new dressing-table, at which my attentive maid stood ready with her powder puff and mirror. Intending to fix the ornaments in my ears, I took the looking-glass from her hand. But it was in the midst of one of its magic fits again, and I did not see my own face in it, but that of my father. At first I thought he smiled at me. Then I saw he was smiling with pure gratification. He sat, I saw, in the parlour of our lodgings, at the very table where he had lost me. But now he was busily engaged in counting out a tremendous pile of banknotes. My father's circumstances had changed already. Well shaven, neatly barbered, smart new clothes. A frosted glass of sparkling wine sat convenient to his hand beside an ice bucket. The beast had clearly paid cash on the nail for his glimpse of my bosom, and paid up promptly, as if it had not been a sight I might have died of showing. Then I saw my father's trunks were packed. ready for departure. Could he so easily leave me here? There was a note on the table with the money, in a fine hand. I could read it quite clearly. The young lady will arrive immediately. Some harlot with whom he'd briskly negotiated a liaison in the strength of his spoils? Not at all, for at that moment the valet knocked on my door, to announce that I might leave the palace at any time hereafter, and he bore over his arm a handsome sable cloak, my very own little gratuity, the beast's morning gift, in which he proposed to pack me up and send me off. When I looked at the mirror again, my father had disappeared, and all I saw was a pale, hollow-eyed girl, whom I scarcely recognized. The valet asked politely when he should prepare the carriage, as if he did not doubt that I would leave my booty at the first opportunity, while my maid, whose face was no longer the spit of my own, continued bonnily to beam. I will dress her in my own clothes, wind her up, send her back to perform the part of my father's daughter. Leave me alone, I said to the valet. He did not need to lock the door now. I fixed the earrings in my ears. They were very heavy. Then I took off my riding habit, left it where it lay on the floor. But when I got down to my shift, my arms dropped to my sides. I was unaccustomed to nakedness. I was so unused to my own skin that to take off all my clothes involved a kind of flaying. I thought the beast had wanted a little thing compared with what I was prepared to give him, but it is not natural for humankind to go naked, not since first we hid our loins with fig leaves. He had demanded the abominable. I felt as much atrocious pain as if I was stripping off my own underpelt, and the smiling girl stood poised in the oblivion of her bulked simulation of life, watching me peel down to the cold white meat of contract, and, if she did not see me, then so much more like the marketplace, where the eyes that watch you take no account of your existence. And it seemed my entire life, since I had left the north, had passed under the indifferent gaze of eyes like hers. Then I was flinching stark, except for his irreproachable tears. I huddled in the furs I must return to him, to keep me from the lacerating winds that raced along the corridors. I knew the way to his den without the valet to guide me. No response to my tentative rap on his door. Then the wind blew the valet whirling along the passage. He must have decided that if one should go naked, then all should go naked. Without his livery, he revealed himself, as I had suspected, a delicate creature, covered with silken moth-grey fur, brown fingers supple as leather, chocolate muzzle, the gentlest creature in the world. He gibbered a little to see my fine furs and jewels, as if I were dressed up for the opera, and with a great deal of tender ceremony removed the sables from my shoulders. The sables thereupon resolved themselves into a pack of black, squeaking rats that rattled immediately down the stairs on their hard little feet and were lost to sight. The valet bowed me inside the beast's room. The purple dressing-gown, the mask, the wig, were laid out on his chair. A glove was planted on each arm. The empty house of his appearance was ready for him, but he had abandoned it. There was a reek of fur and piss. The incense pot lay broken in pieces on the floor. Half-burnt sticks were scattered from the extinguished fire. Lit two narrow flames in the pupils of the tiger's eyes. He was pacing backwards and forwards, the tip of his heavy tail twitching as he paced out the length and breadth of his imprisonment between the gnawed and bloody bones. He will gobble you up. Nursery fears made flesh and sinew, earliest and the most archaic of fears, fear of devourment, the beast in his carnivorous bed of bone, and I, white, shaking, raw, approaching him as if offering in myself the key to a peaceable kingdom in which his appetite need not be my extinction. He went still as stone. He was far more frightened of me than I was of him. I squatted over the wet straw and stretched out my hand. I was now within the field of force of his golden eyes. He growled at the back of his throat, lowered his head, sank onto his forepaws, snarled, showed me his red gullet, his yellow teeth. I never moved. He snuffed the air as if to smell my fear. He could not. Slowly, slowly he began to drag his heavy gleaming weight across the floor towards me. A tremendous throbbing, as if the engine that makes the earth turn, filled the little room. He had begun to purr. The sweet thunder of this purr shook the old walls, made the shutters batter the windows until they burst apart and let in the white light of the snowy moon. Tiles came crashing down from the roof. I heard them rock the foundation of the house. The walls began to dance. I thought, it will all fall, everything will disintegrate. He dragged himself closer and closer to me until I felt the harsh velvet of his head against my hand, then a tongue, abrasive as sandpaper. He will lick the skin off me, and each stroke of his tongue ripped off skin after successive skin, all the skins of a life in the world, and left behind a nascent patina of shining hairs. My earrings turned back to water and trickled down my shoulders.